We've got Kathleen, Really Sean, Philip GR, Scott Miller, Anathea, Iwonk, Jodak, Westar next to Iwonk, Antdroid, Jtrig behind Antdroid, Shiny Joe, Charminius, Caver, Cave Woman, Minnesunda, Eternal Seeker, and Thoakenem in front. And we've got Omion, James B., and John Bennett, who arrived after the start of the story. We've got Paige behind Buddy's list in the key list, Layup behind her on the far left, Squabi, Tarafel, Dr. Krisker AH, Bob01, Elizabeth Green, Loritz, Kiwi, Ziziva, Tiger Lily, J-Trig, Thoakenem, Potru, Caver, Cave Woman, and Zubin El Ganubi. Tonight's story is brought to you in part by MissLore.com for some of the history, DPWR.net for the Denis dates, UruArchives.com for the surface history corresponding to the Denis dates, and the Cavernian Calendar Converter, which is written by Brett Middleton of the Fuzzy Physics Institute for converting between Denis and surface time. Tonight's story is from the game of Riven. A bit of warning. There may be a few minor spoilers in the next few weeks' stories regarding the storyline in the game of Riven. None of the puzzles will have spoilers, though. As I've told these stories, we've learned about life in the cavern. We learned how the Denis came from their proud roots, seeking to shed their pride, yet pride crept back into their lives. We watched it cause the downfall of their great empire. After the fall, pride lived on. Though Anna, known throughout Denis as Tiana, did her best to raise her young son Gen to be a decent person, the fact remained that he blamed her for the fall of the empire, as well as for his father's death. The few short years Gen spent living in the Guild of Books and learning the ways of Denis writing, called Seltav, was enough to plant the seed of pride within him. Fixated on that blame, he viewed his mother's meddling in Denis politics as the root cause of the fall. As such, his mind was closed to any instruction she might give him. Without any guidance, his pride, for what he believed the greatness of Denis to be, grew. We learned of Atris' early years, spent with his grandmother Anna, as she taught him to grow up to be the man he became. We also learned of his teenage years, spent with his father Gen. It took some time, but eventually Atris saw just how mad his father had become, drunk with the idea of power, of ruling over 1,000 ages as a god. We learned of his plans to save Katrin, whom he called Catherine, and the multiverse from his father's machinations. We learned how his grandmother Anna had met Catherine, and the two women made their own plans to not only rescue the multiverse, but Atris as well. After trapping Gen on Riven, we saw Atris and Catherine make a home for themselves on Anna's Age of Mist. They were married on the 13th day of the 7th month in the Denis year of 9431, January 17, 1776. After a few years, Akinar, then Cyrus, was born, and Anna helped them raise their boys. Anna and Catherine kept writing ages, attempting to perfect their mastery of the art. When Anna passed away in the Denis year of 9441, 1786 on the surface, she was 91. Her death had a deep impact on everyone she left behind. Atris and Catherine became withdrawn, and Achenar and Cyrus, without due parental guidance, allowed their own behavior to spiral out of control to the point where they tried to get rid of their parents. Last week, we saw how a surface dweller from Earth found Atris's missing Mist linking book and managed to single-handedly save Atris from his prison. On the first day of the 8th month, in the Denis year of 9462, either January 2nd or 3rd, 1807, after exploring the Age of Mist and the other ages that had survived Achenar's and Cyrus's destructive rampage, the stranger returned to Atris in Denis. Atris had another huge favor to ask of his new friend. Unable to leave his writing but for a few short minutes at a time, he needed to go to the Age of Riven. He briefly explained to his friend that his wife, Catherine, was trapped there with his father. His father needed to be tricked into using a linking book that Atris had written just for him. He asked his friend to go in his stead. We don't know exactly what the stranger was thinking. Was it, "Solving the mystery in the Age of Mist wasn't that hard. How hard could this be?" Or was there no thought of the difficulty the journey might entail, only that Atris was someone who could be trusted, was a friend, and that is all that mattered? In either case, Atris' new friend acquiesced and agreed to go. Atris apologized that he would not be able to give a linking book back to Denis to take along on the journey. Instead, he would be watching the friend's progress, and the stranger should make a sign when Gen had used the special book. Atris would see it, and come for both his friend and Catherine with the means for them to leave Riven. The stranger must have been very puzzled. Whatever thoughts occurred, the stranger took the special linking book and, as Atris turned the descriptive book of Riven to face his friend, linked to this new age. Upon linking to the Age of Riven, the stranger was immediately trapped. Instead of linking to an open plateau, Atris's friend found themselves in a round metallic hut, for lack of a better word. Immediately after materializing, a door of metal bars slammed shut, locking them inside. This did not bode well. Shortly after arriving, a fellow showed up, wearing a rather strange-looking garb. It gave one the impression of being a uniform of sorts, though one that would seem to be more appropriate for the deserts of Arabia rather than a temperate plateau. This fellow started speaking a language the stranger had never heard before. Obviously, the language was not this person's native tongue, as it was spoken haltingly, as if he was struggling to find the right words to use. The guard, for lack of a better word, became quickly frustrated at the stranger's apparent lack of understanding. Seeing the book that the stranger was carrying, the guard approached the cage door, then suddenly reached through and wrested the book for Gen from the stranger's grip. While the guard was examining the book, something struck him in the back of his neck. He quickly became disoriented, then collapsed unconscious. A second man, dressed even more bizarrely than the first, stepped in front of the cage and dragged the drugged, perhaps even dead, guard off to the right. The second man returned to the cage, then threw a lever and staked it in place with a strange-looking knife. The cage door slowly began to raise up, but before it had opened far enough for the stranger to walk through, both of the other men were gone. The stranger began to explore their new surroundings, and walked to the edge of the cliff. Looking down, they saw the body of the first guard laying in the weeds on the slope below them. Carefully, the stranger made their way around the island, the main feature of which appeared to be a temple of sorts, with a large golden domed roof. This new age appeared to be rife with puzzles. There were obvious paths one needed to follow to get from one place to the next, but most of those paths were blocked. It took the stranger quite a while to figure out how to get around them. Some were fairly straightforward, while others took quite a bit of thinking in order to figure out how to proceed. As the stranger explored further, they noticed a rather strange contraption. It had a short staircase leading up to a door for a rather bulbous-looking, pod, for lack of a better word, at least from their point of view. It seemed to be hanging from a pair of large cables that were strung out over the water and leading to a neighboring island. Having explored the island with the temple, the stranger climbed up into this odd-looking carriage. Fortunately, the stranger had a rather quick mind and was able to figure out the controls. The door slammed shut, the pod rotated, and they were off for a wild and wondrous ride over the water. This new island was covered with trees, and the island itself appeared to be a jungle teeming with all manner of life. On this second island, there was a small lake that was fed by the sea through an inlet through the cliffs. Also, there was a village built into the cliffs surrounding the lake. Please join us next week as we see First Contact. The end. And thank you all for coming tonight, and to those of you watching at home. And time to end this story right now.